The 12-4 Minnesota Vikings have some major problems. While they are locked into hosting a home playoff game, having handily won the NFC North, they are one of the shakiest good teams in recent memory. They've won an NFL record 11 one-score games, showing that they have what it takes to win in the clutch, but also that they're not at all dominant, and are 20th in the league with a -19 scoring differential behind the likes of the Raiders, Browns, and Jets. Watching them, they feel unsteady, talented, but leave much to be desired. And while the offense has scored a lot of points, in their biggest games, they go completely comatose. Today, we'll figure out why they struggle in these games, and why, despite their record, Kirk Cousins is having his weirdest season ever. In fact, it's not just weird, it's also surprisingly bad when looking at his stats. He has career lows in yards per attempt and passer rating, and career highs in sacks and interceptions. You could point to him being the 7th most pressured quarterback in the league, but he's actually better under pressure than he is when kept clean. This isn't because he gets pressured and then makes a play. This year, he's constantly anticipating the pressure, so he's speeding up his process to get the ball out, for better or worse. Despite having the fewest short dropbacks of any quarterback in the entire league, his average depth of target ranks just 22nd, the second lowest of his career, and he is 30th in percentage of passes traveling 20-plus yards. Not only all that, but he is also 30th in the league in pass attempts under 2.5 seconds. So to sum all of this up, Cousins takes deeper drops, holds the ball longer, but doesn't push it down the field whatsoever, which means he checks the ball down more than Russell Wilson builds toilets. This isn't like the worst thing ever. Cousins consistently has a pretty high completion percentage, manages the game pretty well, but to win big-time games in this league, you need to go out and make plays, and he doesn't make enough of them because he's always taking the easier path. Before we look at how this affects the Vikings in big games, why they keep embarrassing themselves in big moments, I want to shout out Underdog Fantasy's new playoff game. While I've loved playing their pick'em games every week, they just dropped my new favorite fantasy sports game, NFL Playoffs Best Ball. Best Ball means no ad drops or trades, and whichever combination of your starters and bench score most will be automatically substituted in so that you maximize your points. If you're already missing fantasy football like I am, this is the way to hop back in and make the playoffs count. It's a 10-round draft with 5 other managers, and your roster is completely set for the playoffs, with the final tournament prizes being handed out based on the Super Bowl scoring. Your team doesn't have Super Bowl players, you won't win the top prizes. Best ball drafts are quick and fun. I drafted 1 million of them on Underdog this offseason, and I can't wait to draft 1 million of these. It's $25 to enter and $100,000 to win. And the best thing is, if you still haven't signed up for Underdog, you can still use my promo code Rollins and you'll get your first deposit up to $100 matched. The Vikings have struggled in big games because Kirk only takes what the defense is giving him and won't push the ball into tighter windows. Against the Packers, where they eventually lost 41-17, with a minute 30 left in the half down 21, they need to push the ball down the field to score. They're running this swirl concept to the left with what some coaches call like a corner stop, where Adam Thielen runs the corner and cuts back in, and then a flat receiver to the bottom. Against zone coverage, any good concept needs a control receiver underneath to keep the defensive back honest so he can't just cheat back into the deeper route. The problem is, Cousins always throws the check down way too quickly and doesn't give the offense the chance to make the bigger play. If the look isn't perfect, he isn't throwing it, and defenses know it. Watch Rasul Douglas hang back towards Thielen's route to show Cousins is guarded, but slowly starts to hitch up. Kirk is still at the top of his drop. Like, he can throw now, but he's such a machine, such a robot, that he struggles to process when he needs to take more risks to hold the ball a sec longer to attack the deeper window, even if it's smaller. He's robotic in that he struggles to break out of the structure of the play for almost anything. And I know, I talk about the extreme importance of playing within structure all the time, but quarterbacks who do excel in structure are much more willing to push the ball into tight windows downfield. The Lions are playing cover 1 man rat with inside linebacker help here and 1 deep safety, but are really using him to double Justin Jefferson. The Vikings are running this corner in concept, which is a great call against any type of man coverage. This is because it has an outbreaker and an inbreaker, so it can beat either an inside or outside leverage coverage. Defenders are always positioned based on where their help is in the coverage, so since they have the rat linebacker, Jerry Jacobs is slightly outside leveraged. Typically, so would be Mike Hughes the nickel, but because the safety is bracketing Jefferson, Hughes has low and inside, the safety high and outside. Hughes starts inside, stays extra inside so that he can force him towards his safety help. Pre-snap, this actually tells Kirk that both receivers have the advantage, since each defender is leveraged away from the route's path, so he can fire the ball in before their help gets there. But when he reads the safety doubling Jefferson, so as a robot, you don't throw to him, robots want one-on-ones, instead of reading that the safety is 10 yards off of him, he doesn't hold on the extra tick longer to throw to the wide-open Jefferson, and instead completes the pass for just 5 yards. He struggles to attack when his guys aren't clearly open. He needs to see them with more than a yard of space if he's going to throw it, and because he's so reliant on playing within structure, he doesn't trust his guys to win their matchups even if they're set up perfectly. Here the Vikings use personnel to force the perfect matchup. When they take their third wide receiver off the field and replace him with a fullback, the Packers are pretty much forced to add a third linebacker to match him, since the Vikes could just line up and run it down their throats if they kept another DB in there. They put both their receivers to one side to see if the Packers are playing zone, since if it was man they'd have their other corner covering Jefferson, they don't. So since the Packers don't have another corner on the field, they are forced to match Justin Jefferson with Preston Smith, who is basically a pure pass rusher. Adam Thielen runs off Jair Alexander to isolate J. Jeff on P. Smith, and yeah, at times Jefferson takes too long to get into his route, and he certainly does here, but Cousins has to trust him to win on the option, hold on him just a little bit longer, but instead he progresses backside to his tight end and fullback and gets strip sacked. Now, there are certainly times when he is willing to push the ball down the field, even if he's pretty much programmed not to. When he's at his best, he's squeezing those balls into tighter windows, usually to Jefferson, like here on this smash concept. This is designed to isolate Jeff Okudah here and high-low him, which means stretch him vertically and throw away from whoever he decides to guard. So watch how Kirk gets to the top of his drop and Okudah is squatting on the corner route. Kirk is reading his body positioning and sees that he's opening up to J-Jeff. So on time, he starts to the flat route, but this time sees Okudah reposition his body to the flat and then fires in the corner. He is good enough to make these throws consistently, he has the arm strength, but it's just a matter of actually attempting these throws. Playing with Jefferson has helped. All of Kirk's biggest throws into tighter windows are going to him, but it's just not happening enough. This is one of the explanations for Cousins' statistical dip this year, but another reason is some of the lack of attention to detail by the offensive coaching staff. The Vikings struggle to perfect all the little details of playing good, clean, consistent offense, and too often their receivers are in the wrong spots, which doesn't allow Kirk to feel as confident in what he's looking at and where he's throwing. Additionally, defenses know exactly what they're running before the play even starts. The Jets were consistently jumping routes and blowing plays up or creating massive hits. And then back to the Packers game, when Kirk checked into literally the perfect call against their coverage, they knew what was coming and they ruined it. When he sees Jair Alexander dropping back a bit, he identifies they're in a pretty clear 4-deep quarters coverage. One of the best concepts against quarters is the scissors concept. You can even see him using scissors to the beard here, and why it's so good is because it exploits the defense's rules. In zone coverage, defenders are actually kind of always playing with man coverage principles, where despite the fact it's zone, they're still responsible for a specific receiver, so that guys aren't running wide open. That's the goal of defense, to not have that after all. In quarters, the cornerback is responsible for the outside receiver. In football, he's known as the number 1 receiver, and the safety, the receiver over, who's the number 2. So Scissors messes with each of these defenders and tries to confuse them. They switch release, where Hawkinson becomes the new number 1 and Jefferson now the 2, making him Adrian Amos's responsibility. So when J. Jeff breaks to the outside, 99 times out of 100, Amos would carry him and Hawkinson would come wide open, but the Packers are ready. Defenses are super prepared for their offense due to their somewhat dialed-back scheme from Kevin O'Connell in his first year, and due to some of their inability to break tendencies. Defenses are ready for whatever they're running, which makes the tight windows even tighter, but still, it's on Cousins for not pushing the ball into those windows more often. Big games are big because the opponent is a really good team, everybody's watching in primetime, yet that's when Kirk shrinks the most. You have to go make plays to win big games rather than taking what the defense gives you to the point where you're checking down 15 times a night. It's just not going to work. Pair that with some of their sloppiness and predictability, and the Vikings at this moment just aren't an offense that is going to take it to you in the playoffs. They do have some big wins, even if they weren't the biggest games. Hey, they did beat the Bills, and they do have Justin Jefferson, who is the ultimate difference maker. The Vikings' point differential is still putrid, but at the end of the day, this is a 12-4 team who will be hosting a playoff game on Wild Card Weekend, and if they clean some things up, they could be dangerous. This team is talented, and that does make them scary. Can Kirk Cousins go Kirko Chains, light a fire under his own ass to push the ball deep? Well, we'll find out soon enough.